So what we're going to do is go through the process of creating an Azure Managed Application within the portal that we talked about earlier, which is Partner Center. So let's get there. And here we are in Partner Center. If you've not used it before, if you don't have access to it, this is how we create managed applications and SaaS offerings and virtual machine offerings, all kinds of different types of offers. Note that I am over here on the overview under Commercial Marketplace. So this is where we go in the navigation in order to get started. And then I'll click Get New Offer. So the type of offer we want to create is an Azure application. All right, so with this one, I'll call it simply Test App, something to that effect. I'll put a WS in front of that for our workshop today. And when I create this offer, we'll be taken right into setup for it. There we go. So we're looking at the offer setup. And there are some interesting things here on the screen. Firstly, enabling a test drive. So what I could do is with this particular offer, create it as a test drive, which enables people to try the product for a certain period of time, and then they lose it, it goes away. So the next part that can be interesting here is that we connect our CRM, if we have one, to customer leads. So you can get leads from people coming to your offer and going through setup and such, and you have multiple options for how you want to set up your leads. You can use a simple Azure table that you create within Azure, and you can use the other CRMs noted here or your own custom HTTP endpoints. You can set up a webhook for that. Great. So with each page, oh, I hit the wrong button. With each page, we want to save draft once we made any changes. I haven't made any changes, so we don't see anything, or we don't see a reason to click that yet. Save draft. So here we are on properties. Properties are interesting for us because one thing we get to do is set up categories for our offering. And let's see, it might be a blockchain app accelerator. I don't know. This is useful for finding your application in the Azure Marketplace as it will be categorized. And then obviously we have terms and conditions here that you can put in for yourself, your own custom terms and conditions for your organization, or you can use the standard Microsoft ones. I'll accept that. And then with the standard Microsoft agreement, you can actually add amendments to that. In addition, you can add those amendments for specific customers. So you might have a customer that you have negotiated a custom price point with, and this would be an opportunity to set that up as a custom term. All right, gonna jump back out, and I'm trying to get, there's the button I'm looking for. Now we'll save draft on that page and move on to the offered listing. Nothing magical here. We give our application a name. This is what people will see in the marketplace. Give it a search results summary. So this is what people will see as they're searching through the marketplace, and a short description that you'll be able to see there as well. Finally, a longer description that you can choose to include that will show up on your offer page itself. And then we can put keywords in. We had our category of blockchain earlier. We could put in others. And again, these are helpful to find my offer in the Azure Marketplace. I am required to put in a privacy policy link. So this should be hosted somewhere presumably on your website, that talks about your privacy policy with regard to customer data. You can add links to your offers so that it shows up with those additional links, whatever they may be. And then finally, we need contact information for your support person. And the Cloud Solution Provider Program is sort of a benefit that you can get or through the Azure Marketplace when you are selling your application. It's a way for others to sell your application. We're not going to go too deeply into that. You upload a couple of logos here on the offer listing page, and there you go. Now, I'm not going to hit save draft on this because we didn't fill anything out really. And this one's interesting, preview audience. So as we develop or create our offer here in Azure Marketplace, as opposed to Service Catalog, we're going to hit a point as during the publish process called preview, where you'll be able to preview your application, test it out. So it's sort of a sandbox. And what you can do is put in someone's Azure subscription ID, which would end up being a GUID, of course. That's their ID for their subscription, and you put in a name for them. And this allows other individuals to come in and test your offer when it's in test mode, or when it's in preview, I should say. So that's where the preview audience is for. Very helpful for us. Now, technical configuration. This one is interesting because we only use it, we only fill this out when we're doing a certain type of billing called metered billing. And we're going to cover that in more depth later in the course. So I'll leave that for now. And speaking of go-to-market benefits, I'm not going to go too deeply into them. So we'll just look quickly at, or talk quickly through Co-Sell with Microsoft. That's a program for amplifying your solution through Microsoft field folks who are out there selling applications, and they sell yours. And reselling through CSPs is a cloud solution provider. These are folks that also can sell your applications. It's a program that you can apply to. So we're not going to go too much further in depth there. Let's go to plan overview. This starts to really get interesting for us. Each offer needs at least one plan. Now here we can think about plans as being something like, let's say, silver, gold, platinum, right? SKUs of your product, perhaps. And we can create a new plan. I'll call it Plan 1, and we'll give it a name. Let's call it Silver. And in fact, I'll go back up and call this the Silver plan. Okay, so we'll create our Silver plan. Now note we've got an offer, and we've just created a plan for it. So the nomenclature here is pretty important. And what's really interesting about our plan setup this time is that we're going to choose between a solution template application or a managed application. Solution template being one that deploys without a managed resource group or without a Azure Managed Application itself. So that particular type of offer is not what we call transactable in the marketplace. And what that means is that you can't bill through Microsoft for the application. You're not going to get the advantage of all those go-to-market benefits that you get when we select managed application, which is transactable. All right. This reuse technical configuration is something that I'm going to skip for right now because we're going to go into technical configuration a little bit later. You can select the Azure regions that you want, And we'll save draft here so that we capture the type of plan. And we'll go to our plan listing. Now remember, we have our offer, which had its descriptions, and our plan itself can also have data about the plan. So we've got a plan name, and we might have a silver summary, and we might have a silver description. And there we go. And I'll go ahead and save draft on that. Successfully saved up top. And go to pricing and availability. There we are. Now, the first thing we need to consider here is where we want to sell our product. I was working with a partner just recently, and they were in the UK and chose to only sell in the UK market. I couldn't see their offer because I'm in the US market. Works just like that. So we have something on the order of 141 different countries here that we're able to choose from. And if I look, search on states, I can get to the United States. That's where I'm going to create my offer. I could select all of them if I chose to. Pricing. Now, this gets interesting because we want an offer that we can test with. In our case, we don't want to go ahead and create one that costs $1,000 per month, which your product may very well, but we want to start with a zero price offer. Now, the reason for that is that when our offer is in preview, we want to be able to purchase this plan, and it will charge for it if it's more than $0 per month. So this is a per month license model. Now again, something we have gotten to here that I'm going to step over for right now, and that is metered billing. So we mentioned metered billing a moment ago, said we'd get to it, and we will. Now the last thing I'd like to mention here is plan visibility. I can have a public plan which will show up for everyone who is searching the marketplace in the appropriate market, or I can select private plan. Private plan, remember we talked earlier about having custom deals. So I might negotiate a different price point with a given customer. When I do, I can put their subscription ID here, and only they will see the plan. So I may have negotiated, there we go, $10,000 price per month for a given product. Well, we want them to select their plan. So let's say their name is Acme. We want the Acme plan that I've created to be the one that they purchase. So put in their subscription ID, description, and there we have it. And I will step over to technical configuration. And we'll look at some parts and pieces of this, some of which we're going to come back to. In fact, I'm going to scroll down the page to here where we talk about deployment mode. And we're going to get to the rest of the stuff that was on top of that screen later, and you're going to go through labs for it as well. Alrighty, so when we deploy an Azure Managed Application, you are able to choose to deploy it into a pre-existing resource group. When you do that, you might select it, and you have select complete deployment. It will destroy that resource group and then write in the new resources into your managed resource group. If you choose incremental, it will not step on any of the services that you've created in the managed resource group. Instead, it's meant for typically adding services. So think about someone changing a plan, going from silver to gold. Might there be another PaaS resource that gets deployed as part of that upgrade? May very well. And that's how we take care of that. So I would say, and Julio, you can weigh in on this if you like, I think 99% of the partners I work with use the complete deployment.
That is correct.
And one thing I'll note here, and I'll show you a model later of how we do this, is we can put a URL here for an endpoint, a webhook, if you will, that gets called at the end of deployment. So remember earlier, we deployed our application as a customer. We saw that it was creating resources. When that is over, when that deployment is complete, we can get a call to this webhook. And we're actually going to look in significant depth at this a little bit later. All right, that brings us to customize allowed customer actions. Now, Julio mentioned earlier that we as customers don't have access into the resources that live in our managed resource group. They are managed and owned by the publisher. What we can do as a publisher, though, is we can choose to give certain rights to our customers such that they're able to work with some of those resources that are deployed into the managed resource group. That looks like this. And what we're doing here, if you recall earlier, we deployed a data share and a storage account, just a blob storage account, Azure table, that sort of thing. And what we're doing here is we're putting in permissions such that the customer can actually go in and interact with that data share service, and they can read the data by opening up the blob storage and looking inside of it. And finally, we have allowed data actions down this particular, and I would say it is a very rare solution that needs allowed data actions. In fact, this feature was added only months ago, and not too many people were clamoring for it. But we can put permissions in here as well. What that does is allows the services to talk to each other on the data plane, if you will. So in this case, we're effectively giving the data share account permission to talk to that storage account. And it also gives any other services. Let's say you deploy an Azure function, something like that. You might want to give specific permissions here so that that function can operate with other resources in your managed resource group. And I think Scott's with us. Julio, I know you are. And if anybody wants to comment on any of these things, please do as we go.
Yeah, the whole team is here. So we have Santosh and Scott and Innocent.
Great, okay. So here, oops. So here we're going to set up who has management rights to the application that we're creating. And here we're going to put the publisher's Azure Active Directory ID. That's where the offer's coming from, if you want to think about it that way. And then we can put other object IDs in here, just like we were putting in the IDs of our preview audience. We could put in the ID of a group, perhaps, an Azure group that contains more than one person who might administer the application. And we can set the permission at owner or contributor. I've had the occasion to put in the ID of an Azure function here and give it contributor access to everything in that managed resource group, so that that function, which lived in my tenant, the tenant that was specified up here, was able to still cross that boundary and talk to those resources in the managed resource group on the customer tenant. All right. And I think that brings us back to you, Julio.
All right, thank you, David. All right, so let me